So the question is, are Manchester United better without Benjamin Sesko in the starting 11? Which sounds absurd considering we only just paid around £75 million for him in the summer, but that's actually irrelevant when we're analysing this question objectively. Now, not to sit on the fence, but my answer to that question would be it depends. It depends who the opposition are we're playing, the style and skill sets of the centre-backs that they're using, as well as who else is being used in Manchester United's system for that particular game. Now, in isolation, just in terms of individual current and also potential ability, Benjamin Sesko, of course, when compared with Xerxes, is Manchester United's best centre-forward. However, as we've seen with Cunha playing that false 9 role and Mason Mount being used within the front three instead of Sesko, United actually looked pretty good without a recognised centre-forward. And if you actually go back and watch my video around why I thought Manchester United should avoid signing Mbeumo, it was a style of centre-forward that Ruben Amorim appeared to want at the time that was the main reason for my concern with the Mbeumo signing. And if you go back and watch some of my Mbeumo analysis videos at the time, which I will leave linked in the eye above and in the description below for you to check out after this video, I specified that from a stylistic point of view, I thought Mbeumo would be better paired with a false 9 type of centre-forward, and I still maintain that till this day. And that brings us on to the 3 questions I'm going to be answering in today's video. Firstly, why do I think a false 9 suits Mbeumo's style of play a lot better than a target man advanced forward such as Benjamin Sesko? What are the specific tactical situations where someone like Benjamin Sesko at centre forward would be a better option, and what are those where someone like Mason Mount or Matthias Cunha could be better? And in the short, mid and long term, what do I think are the specific tactical adjustments that Amorim could make to get the best out of a front three of Cunha, Sesko and Mbeumo? But before I go any further, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, including this season's Manchester United's home, away and alternative shirts. They sent me over this Manchester United 01-02 home shirt with one Sebastian Veron number 4 on the back, who is seen as a flop by many Manchester United fans, but I personally still like Veron and I think it's incredibly harsh to label him as a flop, considering he was still pretty good in his 2 seasons at Manchester United and also went on to win a Premier League title. And even prior to his move to Manchester United at both Lazio and Parma, he was considered one of the best playmakers in world football. And so that's why personally I got a Veron Manchester United shirt, just because it's quite unique as well. But if you do want to pick up this shirt, you can get a variety of different names, maybe Keane, Beckham, Van Nistelrooy even on the back. If you spend over $50, you'll also get free shipping as well, and if you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll also get a discount. So I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comments section below. So let's start with the first question. Why do I think Mbeumo suits a false 9 better than he does an advanced forward or a target man? Well, to boil it down in simple terms, it's because when he's playing alongside a false 9, whether it be Cunha, Mason Mount or Bruno Fernandes, or even Joshua Xerxes, the movement of the false 9 towards the opposition's midfield line and towards the ball works to open up spaces centrally within the back line for Mbeumo to then exploit with diagonal runs from out to in, specifically targeting the space between the opposition's fullback and centre-back on the side he's playing, allowing him to then be released in behind using his pace to get into a high-value goal-scoring position, which of course is still very possible whilst playing with a striker like Benjamin Sesko. However, because throughout the majority of each game, Sesko is going to be holding that advanced position, pinning the 2 centre-backs deeper and stretching the space between the opposition's midfield and defensive lines, the space centrally that Mbeumo needs to make these runs just logically are going to be created far less frequently with Sesko in the centre-forward position compared with one of the other 4 options being used as a false 9. Now, if you are tactically aware enough, you may ask the question, how come at Brentford when Ivan Toney left and Wissa was used as the centre-forward, primarily a poacher, advanced type of forward, someone who's going to run in behind the back line rather than drop towards the ball, and Mbeumo was not only able to sustain a high goal scoring rate, but he was probably playing at his most optimal throughout his Brentford career. And this is a fair and interesting question to ask. However, it brings me back to the point I made when Mbeumo was initially signed. If United and Amorim want to get the best out of Mbeumo, not just this season but going forward into the future, they can't use him in exactly the same role that he was used in at Brentford, not just because the system and the style of play is different, but also because I don't think it's Mbeumo's optimal role. See, as I said at the start of the summer, whilst Mbeumo did score 20 goals in the Premier League last season, 5 of those did come from penalties, and he massively overperformed his non-penalty XG by 7.5 goals, which was actually the most in Europe alongside Matthias Cunha, which is understandable from the eye test because Mbeumo did score a lot of long distance goals, which whilst of course do show his shooting ability from long range, you can't expect a player to sustain that goal scoring output, overperforming his non-penalty XG by that amount, unless they are literally prime Lionel Messi. And so that's why I said that at the start of the summer, if United want to sustain the goal scoring rate, which was probably the primary factor as to why Mbeumo was signed, Amorim has to evolve him as a player and use him in a slightly different way in order to optimise the positions he's getting into, specifically increasing his non-penalty XG per shot and his overall non-penalty XG in order to allow him to get into high value goal scoring positions. Meaning that Mbeumo won't have to rely on low probability long shots, which he is still capable of scoring, just not with the frequency that he was doing last season consistently over the next few seasons, and instead reduce the value of his non-penalty XG per shot, which essentially just means giving him easier chances to score from, which should naturally increase his non-penalty XG over the full season, resulting in him not having to overperform his non-penalty XG by as much, if at all, in order to sustain the goal scoring rate for which he was signed for. And so just thinking about it logically, do you want Mbeumo receiving the ball on the outside of the opposition's fullback, or even making a run from the outside position into a wider position in the final third, where he's got to cut back inside onto his left foot and shoot from just outside of the box? Or do you want him being able to take up a narrower position in the half space position where he can then make a darting run between the fullback and centre back, breaking in behind the back line, or starting out wide and making a diagonal run between the same two players, thereby allowing him to receive more chances in 1v1s closer to goal in more central areas? Well, the answer is obvious. The second is going to allow Mbeumo to get into those positions more often and should allow him to score more goals. You're not going to get the best out of Mbeumo by having him sit centrally between the lines in the half space and being the playmaker who threads the ball in behind for players to run onto. You want him to be the player who's running in behind, receiving that through ball. And so whereas you could consider someone like Kang-in Lee, Juan Mata, David Silva more as wide playmakers, Mbeumo, just like the likes of Mo Salah and Heung-min Son under Conte, should be considered more of a wide forward. But of course, when setting up the system, Amorim's objective isn't just to allow Mbeumo to score as many goals as possible. He has to do what is best for the team, and this is going to vary depending on the opposition that United are facing. If United are coming up against a side like a Bournemouth or a Brighton, who are going to use an aggressive pressing system even in the middle third, utilising a high back line, specifically using a back four, then using a false nine may actually be the better option, because you can drag one of the centre-backs out of the back line, with coaches like Hertzler and Iraola often instructing their centre-backs to follow the opposition's forwards high up the pitch in order to maintain their strict man-to-man pressing system. Then this is going to leave only 3 players within the back line, stretching the space between the opposition's fullback and centre-backs, the perfect setup for a wide forward like Mbeumo to exploit, with runs from the half space or out wide. However, when coming up against a side that use a 5 at the back system such as Crystal Palace, who are also going to sit deep and compress the space between the lines, then the movement from the false 9 is not going to create the same amount of space centrally, primarily because they've got an extra player within the back line, but also their man-to-man pressing system isn't as strict. And so instead of taking advantage of the space centrally and in behind the back line, United instead would be better off looking to take advantage of the space wide of that narrow pentagon shape that Palace use ahead of their back line, and so utilising more of an advanced target man type of centre forward such as Sesko, who's going to hold a high position, looking to pin 1, 2 or even all 3 of the centre backs as deep as possible, is going to maximise the space in front. And because Glasner's Palace do sit a lot deeper within the middle third compared with Bournemouth or Brighton, there isn't going to be the same amount of space in behind for Mbeumo to exploit anyway. And so this brings us on to the tactical alterations that Amorim could use in order to get the best out of Benjamin Sesko, but also make United less reliant on quick transitional attacks, improving our ability to create high value chances consistently against deeper defensive units such as the ones we see from Palace, Nottingham Forest and teams further down the table. But it's actually pretty simple, and Mbeumo himself is involved, though not from a goal scoring point of view but from a chance creation point of view. See, because against these deeper defensive units, United are going to have an easier time getting into the final third in the first place, it just makes sense to optimise our ability to create high value chances from crossing situations, which is perfect for someone like Benjamin Sesko, who is as aerially dominant as you could probably want from most Premier League centre forwards. But at the moment, United are far from optimal when it comes to setting up these crossing angles and creating these chances for Sesko. And so this is where we see Mbeumo transition to more of a natural winger as United push into the final third, now holding a wider position on the outside of the opposition's wing-back compared with the narrower position that he would often pick up in the middle third. If you then pair him with a right-footed overlapping wing-back such as either Dalot or I would say preferably Mason Mount, then this can allow Mbeumo to start narrow either in the build-up phase or when we go long from a goal kick, of course looking to optimise his ability to take advantage of the space in behind the back line, but as United get further up the pitch, Mbeumo can start to drift wide, which can then allow one of Dalot or Mount to now make a diagonal run infield to hold a central position, either looking to take advantage of the opposition's narrow midfield via quick circulation of the ball from left to right, or when the ball is on their side, initially holding a wide position on the outside of the opposition's wide midfielder on that side, before making a diagonal run into the half space, with the high positioning of Mbeumo and Sesko, particularly Mbeumo holding a wide position, working to positionally pin the wing-back and wide centre-back to stretch the space between the midfield and defensive lines, maximising the amount of space that either Dalot or Mount have to then receive the ball in, and rather than receiving the ball with their back to goal static, under immediate pressure from the wide centre-back, they are now goal side of their designated presser, receiving the ball at an angle that they can just take the ball straight in front of them and drive at the opposition's back line, forcing them to commit. And actually, you could argue that Ahmad would be more optimal for this type of run into the half space, given that he is left-footed and would be at an optimal angle to then take the ball with his left foot, and certainly having better quality from these areas than someone like Dalot or Mazraoui. However, in the final third, if you have someone like Mason Mount or Dalot behind Mbeumo, then they can provide the overlapping run, which can work to either provide an option for Mbeumo to slide a pass down the outside of the wing-back if he holds his ground, and if instead he drops off to track that overlapping movement, this now creates the opportunity for Mbeumo to shift the ball onto his left foot and put in a curling cross to find someone like Sesko, alongside maybe one of the centre-backs if Amorim gives them the freedom to push forward and provide United with more than one aerial target in the box. Now Sesko's value here would be pinning the two centre-backs deeper, as well as being the aerial target in the box in the final third, but there are other adjustments in terms of coordinated patterns of play and just simple use of players that I think Amorim could deploy in order to get the best out of Sesko and the team as a whole, but I'll analyse those in follow-up videos, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and give the video a like so YouTube is likely to recommend you those videos when they do come out. But if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com, use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below, and I'll leave some other videos which I think you may like on the end screen now for you to check out as well.